Good evening, my name is Camden and welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I am going to be tier ranking all of the covers of the books that I read in 2022, purely based on aesthetics and how well I think that the cover represents the book. Along the way, I'm going to try and give you a little blurb about what each book is about and how well I enjoyed it, but I won't be sharing any in-depth thoughts about any of these books, so if you want to know more about my thoughts on some of them, you can always go to my reading vlog playlist. A lot of those books will be in there. Despite that though, I'm going to remain completely unbiased and judge these purely on their covers. So if you are interested in seeing this video, keep on watching. So I've designed these tiers under the assumption that I am just minding my business, walking through the bookstore, browsing the books, and how would I rank these books based on their covers. The first and highest tier you can achieve is cover by, meaning that I'm already ready to pull out my credit card just by looking at the book. Next is I'm intrigued, so I see the book cover and I'm already very interested. The third tier is I'm reading the description first, so my buying decision has a lot more to do with the contents of the book than the book cover. Next is mediocre at best. That one's pretty self-explanatory. And the worst tier you can get is that the cover is actually a turn-off for me, and I will be buying it based on description alone. So let's just hop into all the books that I read in 2022, and I will tell you how I felt about their covers. First up on the chopping block is The Goose Girl by Shannon Hale. This one was a reread for me. This one's like a fantasy novel based on a Grimm's fairy tale, and this one was written back in like the 2000s, and I feel like it definitely shows on the cover, but I really love this cover. This might be an unpopular opinion because I know they've changed the covers a couple of times since this book was first released, but I really enjoy this one, and I feel like I'm definitely intrigued if I see that one in stores. Next is Book of a Thousand Days, and this one pains me a little bit to say because this is like my second favorite book of all time, another reread for me, and this one is also by Shannon Hale, which is kind of strange that they ended up next to each other, but I feel like this one would have me reading the description first. I feel like there's not a lot to go off of on the cover of this one. There's like a dagger, some flowers, like the script is really pretty, but I'm definitely going to be reading the description to figure out what this book is about before I commit financially to it. Next up is Nimona. This one is like a graphic novel, and if you love the movie Megamind, you should definitely read this graphic novel. Very similar vibes. I'm gonna put it in I'm intrigued. I feel like the art style is really well displayed on this cover, and it does look interesting, so if I saw that one in stores, I would probably be intrigued. Next is A Room of One's Own by Virginia Woolf. This one is a turnoff, for sure. It's just a picture of a chair, which I don't really know who was designing covers back in the early 1900s, but this one is not their best work. This book is a series of essays based on women in publishing and the privileges required in order to produce great art. It was quite interesting, but the cover definitely does not do it justice. Next, Madame Bovary. I'm gonna put this one, I kind of do like the figure on the cover of this book and the fact that she looks very like Renaissance-y, so I'm gonna put this one a little bit higher at mediocre at best, but I just think like even though I enjoy the art on it, it doesn't necessarily seem like a book that I would enjoy. Oh god. Next is Three Truths and a Lie by Lisa Gardner. This one is a short story under 50 pages. It was very interesting and a quick read, but I don't think this cover does it any favors, so I'm just gonna put it in a turnoff, I think. In a Dark, Dark Wood. This is by Ruth Ware. This is her first book, and I do think that the cover represents the book well. It has like the dark background, some twig looking things, and I particularly like the text On this book, it looks like a typewriter. I feel like I would read the description of that one. Next is The River at Night. I do really like the crashing, churning river photography on this one. I feel like if I saw it in stores, I would be intrigued. No, I'd probably read the description of that one as well, just because I feel like this could be like a variety of things. It looks like it could be a thriller, it could be a contemporary or literary fiction. This one is in fact like a survival thriller. I wasn't the biggest fan of the direction that this story took, but I am kind of into the cover, so I'll put it here. I think that fits it best. Snow and Rose. This one I think is going to be a cover buy for me. This one might be like cheating a little bit, but based on the title and based on the cover, I already knew what this book was about before I read the description. It's very clearly like a Snow White and Rose Red retelling, which is a fairy tale that I do enjoy. So this one is like an easy cover buy for me. The art style is super cute on it. It looks very cozy and sweet and wholesome, and it was. This one was really good, 5 out of 5 star for me, but also the cover is 5 out of 5. The Wife Between Us by Greer Hendricks and Sarah Pekkanen. I feel like I've seen another book since this one came out that's done like the woman straight on and the woman in profile, like so precisely done that they look like the same person. I feel like this one has me intrigued, possibly because she's making very steady eye contact with me. Next is Sadie by Courtney Summers. I really enjoy the cover of this book. I particularly enjoy the text on it, but I also think that the figure really represents the book and the character of Sadie really well. But if I were to just see this one in stores, where would I put it? I guess I'm gonna put this one on I'm Intrigued. I don't know if I would buy this one solely based off the cover, but I definitely think the cover would like catch my eye really easily. This one is really good. It's like a YA mystery novel. I don't know if you would consider it a thriller because it's not incredibly suspenseful, but it does have like a really interesting podcast element to it. So if you enjoy true crime or true crime podcasts, this one is a good choice, although I feel like everybody has talked about this book and I'm like years late to reading it, so you've probably already read it. Next is All These Beautiful Strangers, and this one is really interesting because I feel like it has a really peaceful looking lake on it, a woman who's like floating peacefully in the water, and this one really gives off like cute summer romance to me more than it does twisty dark academia thriller. So I don't feel like the cover represents the story within very well. I do like the cover, I just don't think it really fits the vibe of the book. I'm gonna put it in reading the description first. Next is Spinning Silver by Naomi Novik. This one is really easy for me. It looks like so many other books that I really like love and have been interested in, so I feel like that one would definitely be like an automatic cover buy for me. This one is like a Rumpelstiltskin retelling. I think I gave it a 4, but that cover is a 5. Next is Circe by Madeline Miller, and I have to say I feel like the title Circe would like have me cover buying this. None of the covers really do this book justice, which makes me mad because it's a good book. Just based on the cover, not based on the title, I'm gonna put this one in I'm reading the description first. Next is Norse Mythology by Neil Gaiman. I'm gonna put this one in I'm Intrigued because this one looks like it could be like a Viking historical fiction, possibly just based on the cover. But I would definitely see this one. Obviously, I'd see the title of Norse Mythology and I'd know, but if I'm just going based on the cover of the book, I would probably see this one, pick it up, read the description, and then decide from there. Next is We Are the Wildcats by Siobhan Vivian. This one I'm gonna put this one in mediocre at best. I feel like I really like the colors on this one, but it does very much give off like sports team energy, which is not my vibe. Even though I read this one, I read it as like a challenge in my reading like a Taurus video. I didn't really enjoy it in the end, and that's because I don't really enjoy sports books, but I gave it my best go, and I feel like for me this would be a mediocre at best. There's nothing against like the art on this one or anything like that, but it just doesn't seem like a book that I would be interested in, so I would not pick it up. Next is A Psalm for the Wild-Built by Becky Chambers. This one is automatically a cover buy for me. This one is a really sweet, low stakes sci-fi novel about a monk and a robot who are going around interacting with people in a very futuristic utopian society. It's very cute. I love the colors on this one, the greens, the browns, the yellows, and the oranges. I just think it's so cute. Next is A Prayer for the Crown Shy, also by Becky Chambers. This one is the sequel to that one, and I like this one a lot as well, but I think I like the other one slightly better, so I'm gonna put this one in I'm Intrigued. Next is The Last True Poets of the Sea. This one, I really love the colors of the text on this one, like the orange, pink, yellow vibes and the little plants in the background. It really denotes like the bottom of the sea to me, and I really think this one represents the book well. I'm gonna put it in cover buy because I think this one is just so cute and I love the colors of it. This one is like a 12th Night retelling and I quite enjoyed it. It's a very sweet coming of age story. Next is Long Way Down by Jason Reynolds. This one is the graphic novel version. I'm not particularly drawn to the cover of this one. I guess I would put this one in mediocre at best. Does that mean? Next is Yes, No, Maybe So by Becky Albertalli and Aisha Saeed. This one is following a Jewish and a Muslim character who are doing some political canvassing together. I feel like this one really represents the book well because it shows them like day after day doing their little job together. I feel like it's very cute. I'm gonna put this one in I'm Intrigued. I'm recording! Next is Late to the Party. I feel like this one has a pretty cute cover, but maybe it looks a little bit juvenile to me. So I feel like I would put this one in reading the description first. Next is Swallowtail, and this one is like a poetry collection. I feel like it looks like what it is, and I'm not big into poetry. Next is All of Our Hidden Gifts. This one I really like the cover of. In fact, it was a cover buy, so I can say that with all sincerity. This one is a really interesting story of a young girl who's getting into tarot reading, and her best friend ends up going missing, and she's using like these kind of new predictive magical powers that she's discovered to try and locate her best friend. It is really good. Has a lot of really interesting conversations around gender identity and things like that as well. Next is When You Trap a Tiger. This one is a really cute middle grade, and I don't know, I love the tiger on it. I love the colors on it. It's following a girl whose grandmother is in really poor health, and she's kind of coming to terms with letting her grandmother go and grief and things like that. It was very sweet and wholesome and precious. This one, I don't know. Stick an animal on the cover of a book and I'm obviously very into it. This is Sharks in the Time of Saviors by Kawai Strong Washburn, and I absolutely adore the cover of this one. I saw it and I immediately like added it to my Amazon cart, so I feel like I'm fully justified in saying that this one would be a cover buy for me. Next is The Majesties, and the kind of like gouache paint on the cover of this one I think is really interesting, so I'm gonna put this one in I'm Intrigued. I ended up actually really hating this one because there was a really strange plot twist at the end of it that I did not see coming because it was a literary fiction book until the last minute when it decided it wanted to be a thriller, but that's neither here nor there. I'm still intrigued by the cover. Next is Skin of the Sea. This one, cover by. Next is She Who Became the Sun by Shelley Parker Chan. We have our main like figure here and then a whole army in the background, and I think this is like a flag. This one definitely, if I saw that one in stores, would have me intrigued. Definitely looks like a fantasy with high politics and like a strategizing element to it, which is pretty much exactly what it is. Next is The Shadows by Alex North. I feel like this one looks really, really intriguing. This like long stretching hand and the shadows of all these boys. I honestly feel like this book was like a fever dream for me. I really don't remember a lot of what happened in it, but the cover looks great. Next is Grown by Tiffany D. Jackson. I love the cover of this one. Something about the figure on the cover of this book, I just want to get to know her, want to find out what she's about. This one is a really dark story, kind of inspired by the case of R. Kelly and how he groomed girls in the music industry, and we're following from the perspective of a young girl who is being promised a lot of things by an older producer and being abused and manipulated. And it's a very difficult story, but it was really, really powerful and impactful, and one of my favorites of the year. Next is Once Upon an Eid. This book is so cute. I love the cover of this book. We have all these just really happy looking people on their favorite holiday, and how could you not love that? It's like a short story collection from all kinds of different Muslim authors, and I love this book. I reread it every year during Ramadan. Next is Invisible Girl by Lisa Jewell. This cover is like absolutely nothing special. There's like really nothing on the cover anyway. Like, what is that, a rose? I feel like there's nothing really to draw you in or turn you off, so I'm just gonna put it in mediocre at best. Next is A Cuban Girl's Guide to Tea and Tomorrow. This one I feel like gives off really cute, wholesome summer lovin' vibes as well. I feel like I would put it up here, and I'm intrigued. It's not quite a cover buy for me, although I love the pink. Next is The Guest List by Lucy Foley. This is about a bunch of wedding guests who are all stranded on an island as like secrets are coming out, people are starting to die and things like that. I feel like this cover is like not doing a ton for the book. It doesn't really intrigue me at all, so I'm gonna put it in mediocre at best. Next is Blood Like Magic by Lizelle Sambury. I really like the cover of this one. I like the figure on it. She looks quite daunting, and I also really like the covers on here and the smoke. It gives off very much like witch vibes, which is pretty much exactly what this book is about. So I'm gonna put this one in I'm intrigued. Hungry Hearts, and this cover in particular, I'm definitely going to put up in cover buy, because you know how I feel about food at this point and cooking, and so all of this, like this plate of dumplings, like I would obviously buy this book just to be able to look at this food. This book is like a short story collection set on Hungry Hearts Row or something like that. It's like this area of the city where all the restaurants are, and I actually didn't really like this one. I didn't like the way that all the stories like tied together very loosely, but the cover looks delicious. So next is Within These Wicked Walls. This one is like a Jane Eyre retelling, and I thought the concept sounded really interesting, but it kind of just ended up being a mediocre one for me. I'm gonna put this one in I'm reading the description first. I feel like the cover does generate some interest, but I would definitely want to know what the book is about before I picked it out. Next is The Witch's Heart by Genevieve Gornichek. This one represents the book really well, but I don't know that the cover really like speaks to me. Which is like, this one was like one of my favorites of the year, so I'm trying not to be biased. I'm gonna put this one in reading the description first. I feel like it looks similar to a lot of books that I love, and that's what would have me interested in this book. All the Feels by Olivia Dade. Mediocre. Sorry. Next is The Drowning Kind by Jennifer McMahon. I feel like I wish this one gave off like more water vibes than it does, because the whole story is about this pool that's like purportedly heals people or brings them youth or something like that, and I feel like that would have been a much more like interesting thing to put on the cover of this book. I don't know why there's just a girl holding flowers, so I'm gonna put this one down here for me. Next is Love in Color by Bolu Babalola. This one is like short stories and like a lot of mythology retellings or like classic retellings, and it's all by the same author. This one, I feel like, does it intrigue me or does it make me want to read the description? I'm gonna put this one in I'm intrigued. Next is Local Woman Missing by Mary Kubica. I definitely feel like I look at this cover, even minus the title, and it gives off thriller vibes, but I feel like I would put this one in I'm reading the description first. Next is The Daughter of Dr. Moreau by Silvia Moreno Garcia. I feel like if you have watched 2 or 3 of my videos, you probably know how I feel about Silvia Moreno Garcia and how she is absolute perfection. And I'm gonna put this one in Cover By. I love the girl's dress in this. I love the architecture around her. I love all this like winding ivy and plants. I feel like this cover is so beautiful and intriguing, and I love it. Next is Ariadne by Jennifer Saint. This one I don't really know. I don't like kind of the lack of like defined features on her face in this one. I feel like I'm gonna put this one in mediocre at best. The Last Thing He Told Me. I like the cover of this one. I like that it's like, are these like houseboats or like houses right on the water? I don't know, but I'm intrigued. This one was a really interesting experience for me. I went into it thinking it was going to be just like a straight up thriller, and it definitely turned into more of like literary fiction or like a mystery suspense novel. So I think if you went into it with the right expectations, it would be a really good book, but just because I had the wrong idea in my head when I read it, it kind of fell a little flat for me. Next is Greenwich Park. I really like the house on the cover of this book and the door. I just feel like I don't like the figure being here in this one. I wish it was just a picture of the house. So I'm gonna put this one in reading the description first. Next is Midnight in Everwood. This one is like a Nutcracker retelling, and I actually really enjoyed this one. I hadn't really heard anybody talk about it, but it was really good and honestly really dark. Much darker than I was expecting from like a ballet retelling. But it was good, and I'm gonna put this one in I'm intrigued. I like the little like almost looking like paper cutouts on this one and the figure of the ballerina. Next is Blackout. This one is by a variety of authors. It was not my favorite. I don't know. Are any short story collections my favorite? Probably not. I'm gonna put this one turn off. I don't know. Something about like the text on here feels very YA. This one, I don't know who made this decision. This is like a very oversized face with like, what are these, like pressed flowers on it? It's a really good book though, and you should definitely read it. It's under 100 pages. It has a really incredible plot twist at the end. It gives off like Don't Worry Darling vibes, and you should read it. Next is Rock, Paper, Scissors. I like the cover of this one. I feel like it gives you very much like the setting of what this book is going to be. It gives very isolation vibes. We're looking down at like a snowy forest, and the church is here that our main characters are staying in. Next is A History of Wild Places. I really like the ink stain kind of look on this one. and the trees. So I feel like I'm gonna put this one in I'm Intrigued. Next is I Must Betray You by Ruta Sepetys. This one is really interesting. We're following a boy who's living through the communist regime in Romania, and I really liked this book, but I feel like the cover is a turnoff for me. I don't know why. Something about the way that the boy is running just looks so awkward to me. I'm really petty. Next is Six Crimson Cranes by Elizabeth Lim. Cover by. Particularly this cover, I just absolutely love it. I do like the other cover as well, the one that's like the American version. But this cover in particular, like just the pastels, the cranes, so beautiful. Next is All's Well by Mona Awad. I really like the cover of this one. I like this very dramatic figure and like the arrows in her. Next is The Drowned Woods. I like the cover of this one, but I don't think it's like top tier for me. I feel like I'm gonna put this one in I'm Intrigued. Okay, I'm gonna try and do these a little more rapid fire. Next we have A Flicker in the Dark. I like the color scheme, I like the trees, I like the fireflies on this one. I'm putting it in I'm Intrigued. The Younger Wife, one of my favorite authors, but I absolutely hate the cover of this book. It looks like it was made by like a 12-year-old. Turn off. Next is The Golden Couple, Greer Hendricks, Sarah Pekkanen. Boring. Why? There's just a gold rose on it and a white cover. Mediocre at best. Yerba Buena by Nina LaCour. I love the colors on this one. A couple different greens. We got a wine, we got a vase. This one is set at like a restaurant and it's a sapphic romance and I like it. Intrigued. You Truly Assumed by Layla Sabrine. This one, cover by. These girls look fierce, they look fabulous, they look on fleek. I want to be friends with them. Next is Gallant by V.E. Schwab. It looks gothic, it looks cool, it looks a little too beige. I'm putting it in reading the description. The Paris Apartment by Lucy Foley. I like the architecture on this one. I like the colors, pink, greenish blue, very pretty. Putting it in Intrigue. Hidden Pictures by Jason Reculek. We have a car in the forest. Somebody looks like they're digging a grave. The only thing I don't like on this cover is these like little pictographs instead of letters. A little childish. Putting it in reading the description. Next is Jackal by Aaron E. Adams. I really love the cover of this one. The orange, we have the face that turns into like a constellation night sky. And I also really love that the lettering is diagonal on this one. I'm gonna put this one up in cover by because I just think it's really beautiful. Next is Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow by Gabrielle Zevin. This book nobody could shut up about this year. I really like the wave on this, and also I really like the lettering. I feel like it fits the story very well. If you've read this book, you know that this particular piece of art is like heavily mentioned in the book itself, so I really like it for that. But if I just saw this in stores, where would I put it? I'm gonna put this one in Intrigued. Next is Hester. This one is like a Scarlet Letter retelling from the perspective of an Irish immigrant who falls in love with Nathaniel Hawthorne. And the cover is the worst thing about this book. I feel particularly mad having read this book and knowing that she is like known for beautiful embroidery. She likes to embroider like jaguars and whole scenes, and she embroidered like a scene of Adam and Eve in some like gloves that she made, and it makes me really mad that they just chose like very generic florals for this cover, knowing that she's such an expert seamstress and things like that. So I'm just gonna put this one in mediocre at best. Next is Daisy Darker by Alice Feeney. This one was, I think, my favorite thriller of the year. I feel like this cover does not really do the book justice, and it's not all that visually interesting for me. So I'm gonna put this one in mediocre at best. Next is The Weight of Blood by Tiffany D. Jackson. This one is a Carrie retelling, and I really love the cover of this book. I feel like it's very haunting. I'm gonna put it in cover by. I really love it. Next is Galatia by Madeline Miller. This one is about a man who falls in love with the statue he created. It's a short story. It's under 50 pages, I think. And I really enjoyed it. I feel like this cover looks like a vagina, especially knowing what the book is about and the fact that he's like in love with his statue and treats her like a sex object. I really wouldn't be surprised if this was supposed to be a vagina. I don't know. I'm gonna put this one mediocre at best. Legends and Lattes, my favorite book of the year. So good. Cover by, we have our main character Viv and her love interest, forgot the name, but they open a coffee shop and it's so cute. She's decided to put her killing ways behind her and start a new life, and she starts it in a coffee shop, and this book is so amazing. You should definitely go read it if you haven't yet. Next is A Dowry of Blood. I don't like either of the covers for this book. There are two different ones and I don't like either of them. I'm gonna put this one in a turn off. Okay, next is Cackle. This one is apparently horror. I went into this book thinking it was gonna be like a sapphic witchy romance, and it was definitely not that. Based on the cover alone, I feel like I would put this in I'm intrigued, because it does look like something I would really like, but I actually really did not like that book. Next is Finn. I don't like that cover. I don't know. And lastly, we have The House Witch by Della Mock. This one, I love the cover. We have a cute little cat. We have a broom that's like sweeping on its own, tea that's pouring on its own, a little fire with a cooking pot, ingredients. It looks so cozy and witchy and cute, and it sucked. I hated this book. It was probably one of the worst books I read this year. And that is that, my friends. That is all of the books that I read in 2022, tier ranked based on their covers and how much I would want to buy the book based on the cover. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. If you liked it, please go like the video, comment down below, subscribe to my channel so you can see more of my content. I post every Friday, and I will see you all with a new video next week. Goodbye.